Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be with God.
Welcome to Bellows Falls Community Television. We're here at St. Charles's Church in Bellows Falls, Vermont. Today's guest is D. Thomas Burns, also known as the Green Mountain Cantor. Tom is a severely handicapped veteran who blends his unique singing talent with his military experiences and religious dedication. We are pleased to have the Green Mountain Cantor on our community television channel. We hope you enjoy this tribute to veterans on this Memorial Day weekend.
Hello, my name's Tom Burns. I'm classified as a 100% disabled veteran. I was hit in the head in Vietnam by a shrapnel from a mortar round back in 1968. It paralyzed one side. Now, whenever I tell someone that, I always add that the paralysis is the bad news. The good news is my name is not on that Vietnam memorial located down in Washington, D.C., known as the Wall. And there is some 58,000 plus names of American servicemen and women who are on that wall who died in Vietnam. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story in the military. Now, I know there's probably a lot of you veterans out there who thought you might have got shafted by the military. I'm telling you, you don't know what shaft is until you hear my story. I was in high school. I used to type 91 words a minute. Because I used to play the piano, I had my own band, and therefore my fingers were limber, and I was able to type 91 words a minute. And so I ran out of colleges to go to. This was back in 1967 when they were looking for warm bodies to go to Vietnam. But I thought, I graduated from college, and I thought, well, I might as well. They drafted me. They sent me my letter, and I went. And I thought, well, I'll be a typist, so I should be a typist. So anyway, I go down to Fort Benning, Georgia, from basic training. Now here we've got 120 guys in this training cycle, and here I am. Out comes the company commander to tell us that the company clerk was rotating. That means that he was going on to a different area at Fort Benning, and he asked if anyone could type. Well, I knew I could type, so I raise your hands, he said. So I raised my hand. All 120 of us, and probably 70 of them raised their hands because we'd already been running in the morning for 3 or 4 days, and we found that wasn't very much fun, this basic training. So anyway, as we line up outside the orderly room to go in and take the typing test, I thought, as we get closer, I'm looking at the 3 or 4 guys I could see ahead of me and see how they were typing. I could see them taking the test, and I could see that they were the old hunt and peck method. They didn't know how to type. So I thought, when it was my turn, I thought, gee, I better not try to type fast. The catch must be not to make a mistake. So I just sat right down. I was nervous because this could have been important, and it was. So I started to take the test. And it was like a 2-minute test, and I stopped and I looked up, and there's all the drill sergeants and the company commander and the first sergeant standing there with their mouths open. They'd never seen anybody type that fast. And I didn't even try to type fast. So the company clerk, the commander, the first sergeant said out the door, there must have been 30 guys left in the line to take the test. And we've got our company clerk. So I'm the company clerk, and all for my 8 weeks of basic training, all I had to do was type morning reports, and while the rest of those guys had to do KP and run in the morning. So I had a pretty good deal. So the first sergeant told me, he said, listen, he was I think a World War II veteran, and he wasn't all that sharp. So he'd hand me a intercompany morning report or a memo to pass on, and I'd come back and I'd say, Sarge, let's use this 2-syllable word here. And, he'd say, okay, yeah, I didn't know you were a college graduate, huh? College. And I said, yeah. He said, why don't you want to stay right here with me for your entire year hitch? Or, I said, yeah, it wouldn't be too bad. Fort Benning, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. This is as opposed to going to Vietnam or anything. So I said, sure. So I thought I really had it made. About a week before the training cycle was over, he came in and he said, we got a problem, Burns. He said, the general of Fort Benning decided no more retaining of trainees. And I said, what's that mean? Well, he says, your name's gone into the Department of Army, and whatever they decide, wherever they need you, that's where you'll go. Because while you're in basic training, you get chances to go to OCS or NCO school or take certain kind of courses and whatever. But I thought, anyone that does that, you have to sign up for more years if they're going to get that education. So I decided, well, I'll just soon stay right here and without signing up for a couple more years. So anyway, it didn't look like it was. Sure enough, I got orders a week later to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Now that was strictly, back then, it was strictly Vietnam oriented. But the good news is my MOS was 11C, which is a mortarman, as opposed to 11B, which would have been infantry. So I went to Fort Polk, and I'm thinking, well, at least I'm going to be operating a mortar and not out in the bush with the infantry. And so I went to Fort Polk, and I scored 98 out of 100 on the final mortarman's test, expert mortarman, and I was pretty proud of that. And even the company commander said he'd never seen anyone get that or score that. I studied harder for that mortar test than I did in all the years of college that I went to. So anyway, I got, sure enough, orders to go to Vietnam. So I figured, well, at least I'm going to be in the rears with the mortar. So I go to Vietnam, and we land in Cam Ranh Bay, and that was pretty nice. It was, there wasn't any shooting or anything, and so I was assigned to the 1st Air Cav. And little did I know that was one of the most active units over there. I found out. We flew in to the Ah Sha Valley 3 days later and they were shooting at us as we were landing in a helicopter, and I couldn't believe it. So I got company commander, I report to the company commander there, and I told him my serial number and name and serial number. But I also added that I was a mortarman. I want to make sure he knew. And he said, well, the mortar platoon is full. Go over and see Rodriguez over there. He's in the line platoon, and he'll take care of you. So I did, and sure enough, I'm in the line platoon. We went out. We used to move out in what they call a fan fashion with 3 point men. The fourth day, I guess it was, that we were out on maneuvers, 2 of the point men were killed. And I remember the squad leader Rodriguez come up and he said, "Burns, you got to go on point." Now that's the last thing that you hear when you leave the States. If you go to Vietnam, don't go on point. And so I said to Rodriguez, the squad leader, I said, look at what I don't know anything about. I'm a mortarman. I was a clerk typist and things. And he said, well, I said, there's 4 other guys in this squad. Why can't they? One of them, 2 of them. No, he says they're too short. We need you. He said, because short meaning they don't have much time left in country, and they think about home, and they miss the tripwires and things. So I remember laying down that night thinking, and it was monsoon season and the mud and it was cold, and I started to cry when I realized that I went from clerk typist at Fort Benning, Georgia, which is a pretty safe thing, I think, in terms of the military, to on point in Vietnam, what seemed like overnight. And of course, I was hit in the head 7 months later from a mortar round. Now, isn't that ironic? And it paralyzed one side. But that's my story. But so any of you veterans out there who think that you may have got shafted in the military because you put in for Hawaii and they ended up sending you to Germany or somewhere, this was a real shaft. Clerk typist, 91 words a minute to on point in Vietnam, not having any idea what a tripwire was, but I learned all that stuff. But that's my story.